Hey everybody, Big Bear here with the first video in my big build series. I'm starting a massive project in my workshop, building a starport full of all my favorite ships from across different science fiction franchises. And we're going to be starting off with the Enterprise D. Well, most of it. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the sub-assemblies that you need to put the Enterprise D from Gambody into before you can install the light effects that make it really, really pop. But not only that, I'm going to go into exactly how you make this lighting rig and install it into the model. Before we can build our light rig and assemble our print, we're going to make sure we have everything we need to get the job done. Of course, you're going to need the print itself. It took me about 5 or 6 rolls of filament to print the full body of the Enterprise D. It is important to note it is a lot of parts, and you need to print this in a very, very high resolution layer height, so it takes a long time. I actually used Creality's K2Plus and found it just blitzed through this print compared to some of my older Ender machines. I've actually included time lapses of those prints that you can find in the shorts on my channel. But you are going to need about 5 or 6 rolls of filament. And then for your light effects, like your engine nacelles or your deflector dish, you're going to need either transparent PLA or liquid resin. Now, I'm going to be using liquid resin just because it provides a much cleaner look. I don't necessarily like how transparent PLA can look, but it's absolutely an option if you do not have a resin printer. The lighting techniques that we're going to be building, the rig for this, will work with either just fine. Now, in order to assemble the model itself, you are going to need some basics, some kind of super glue. I use something called PLA gloop on a lot of my models, but with these bigger ships, it's very difficult to work with because it's toxic. So something like crazy glue or gorilla glue will work just fine. You are going to want Bondo putty. It's not only great for sealing all the joins in the spacecraft, but it will help you fix any errors that may occur during assembly or during the print. Lastly, to get that perfect surface quality, you're definitely going to want a sandable filler primer, a 2-in-1 primer like this one, and sanding blocks or sandpaper. I go all the way down to 220 grit when I'm trying to get a really smooth surface on my model. To build the light rig, you're going to need some of your soldering basics, wire, you're going to need shrink tubes, soldering kit, all that. But one thing that's really helpful when building these larger models is to make sure and get yourself some connectors. When we have a whole lot of different lighting elements coming together at once while we're putting together the body or something like that, it can be very difficult to have to stop and get the wires together and soldered and shrink tubed and all that. So it's much easier just to click and have it done. So with larger models like this, I do recommend getting a large number of these connectors and incorporating them into your build. And we're going to be doing that with this build. Now, with the Enterprise D in particular, I have a very, very simple light rig. I'm going to be using these 5-volt LED strips. I like these because they can charge via USB, so I don't have anything complicated to work with. And also they're compatible with the lithium batteries that you can get really, really cheap on Amazon. You don't need a big one. Remember, we're just lighting up strips here. There's nothing complicated. Um, you want to make sure with these light strips, you're getting a high density light strip where the lights are very close, and then it has this line of silicone across it. And what this does is it diffuses the light so you don't get those big glaring dots where each LED light is. That really takes away from the quality of the model in the end. The final piece of this puzzle is going to be the charge board. Now, you can get these compatible with all kinds of ports. This one's USB-C, and this means that it's as simple as plugging it in to charge the battery. We don't have to swap batteries out or open up the model once we're done. So definitely want to get one of these. Now, the Enterprise D in particular has a unique feature where the saucer and this drive section can separate. So we're actually going to be building 2 complete rigs in order for both of them to be lit separately. So uniquely in this kit, you will need 2 charge boards and 2 batteries. Normally, you might only need 1. Another note is while I do show a single string here, I think I used 5 or 6 different lengths. So it's about 40 feet of LED lighting to make this print happen. So make sure you get enough to cover all the different areas of the model. Lastly, this, as you can see, sort of has an orangish color. This is a warm color, a warm white. I use warm white on the interiors for the windows because that's inside a spaceship made in the 1980s. But for the light effects like the deflector dish and the nacelle, we're going to want something brighter and cleaner. So we're going to use a cool daytime bright white. Now they'll both work because one of the benefits here is that we're going to be printing the nacelles and the deflector dish in the color they're supposed to glow, so that even with a white light, we'll get the proper glow color. So technically you could use the warm and the bright for both. I just preferred to have the crisper color on the nacelles and the deflector, which I'll show when I build the rig. Once we have our model printed, we need to break it into sub-assemblies. We can't put the whole model together because unfortunately we won't have access to many of the places we need to install all of our different lights. But likewise, we can't put the lights in when it's completely disassembled because they need to be able to reach different sections. So the compromise is to build sub-assemblies large enough to install permanent sections of lighting into, but small enough that we can still access all of them without difficulty. And for the Enterprise D kit from Gambody, this is what that looks like. We have the saucer section here and the drive section here. Obviously, the drive section saw a little bit more assembly than this one did. Now, because these actually separate in the final model, we will be building a fully separate light rig for both of these. But we're going to put a little bit of a bonus on it so that we only have to use one charge cable when it's assembled. The tricky part in lighting up a kit like the Enterprise comes from these really cool windows. You have windows in a row on both the top and the bottom of the spacecraft. But not only that, they're at the front and the rear of each of these sections. That means that we can't just put a single strip of lights anywhere here, or we'll be missing a ton of the windows. Likewise, we can't light each window individually because there's hundreds of them. This meant that we needed to come up with an economical compromise so that we're not spending a fortune on hundreds of individual LEDs, and labor-wise, I don't want to wire every single window. The solution came from LED strip lights. What we do here is we put the strip back on over each other like this. We loop it around, and this creates a dual light source. Now, when we insert it into the model, and you can see there's plenty of hollow space in here in frames, what that's going to do is it's going to have the light emit from both directions, filling the windows in the front and back, but also top and bottom. What's even better is because the lights aren't directly underneath any of these windows, we won't see the electronics to give away the game, and they won't be affected when we paint the model. So we don't have to worry about masking off the windows later on. As you can see, most of these strips have these little plug connectors on them. And that is, like I said before, because when I'm assembling these pieces, I don't want to have to stop while they're close together and wire together 3 or 4 connections. It's much easier just to click and be done with it. Some instances, like, for example, over here, make that a little difficult. As you can see, running this wire through here, if I'd already wired a connector onto the LED strip, then I wouldn't have been able to put it through the structure of the spacecraft. So make sure when you are putting connectors on that you identify when it is and it isn't an option. Before you can decide how you're going to build your lighting rig, you need to know all of the light sources that are going to go into it. Each section here is paired with the LED strips that are necessary to light it up. For example, this section here needs warm LED lighting in the windows. So I've included a looped LED strip, which will attach to the structure and light up the entire interior. But it also has an impulse engine on the back here. So we have one of our cool lights that will nestle in there, and obviously no connectors here because it has to fit through this hole. So this one piece requires 2 separate lights. And you have to do this count for each and every piece you're doing. The reason is when you build your final rig, you need to make sure that it has enough connections for all the light sources. So all of my individual saucer sections are going to have their own light. Each of my impulse engines is going to have its own light. And I need to make sure all those are accounted for when I build my final rig. I know it's a masterpiece. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's going inside the model. So our basic rig right here, we have the charge board and the battery rigged up. You will see some electrical tape here protecting those connections. Do not wrap the whole board in electrical tape, only the end here. You need air to be able to flow over the board or else it might get too hot. So don't overdo it with the electrical tape. I just like to protect those connections. And then this board has all the connections necessary to do the entire saucer section. So there is a port right here on the model where I can put a little removable hatch to plug in that charger. But at the same time, I don't like the idea of the whole ship requiring two chargers when I have it on display. So fortunately, the charge board does have an input here, and we're going to be using an additional connector that comes out the rear of the saucer and goes into the connecting portion of the star drive. And what this means is that when I'm displaying it as a full model, I only have to plug in the charge port on the star drive and it will feed power to the saucer section. And this saves you having to put in a whole nother USB port for the final display. Our light rig for the star drive is essentially identical, with one key difference. There isn't quite as much room inside the structure of the star drive, and a lot of that space needs to be open for our lighting. So our battery needs a little bit of extra room from the charge board to tuck into one of the hidden nooks there. Otherwise, it's essentially identical. A battery and charge boards with all the connectors we need to fit each of the different lights here. Now, with the star drive, it wasn't as simple as putting a simple loop of LEDs through the structure like it is with the saucer section. We have two different sections here that we need to light. And uniquely, we also have lights or window panes just about everywhere on this thing. So we need to take that into account. I was able to place these LED strips in here, and you can see it will go all the way to the back when it's done. And when placed in here, tucked into that corner, you can see they can go both up and down. The light source goes both to the top and bottom and out the side, just like it does on the saucer. However, it doesn't provide any light to the second section, so we need a second loop. Believe it or not, the loops are efficient enough to light every single one of these windows, even the windows on the back section. We do have our last challenge, though, which is this little impulse engine here for the drive section. We simply use, boom, right here, put this tiny LED strip there, and the deflector dish up front, a tiny LED strip here. And what's great is because these already have little shelves where we can glue the strips in, we don't need to worry about it when we assemble the other side. The biggest challenge with this is the engine nacelles. We need a strip long enough to wrap the entire nacelle section like this, simply wrapping along this whole length, and we need a separate one here. But the key is guiding the wiring through the entirety of the model. Now, obviously, you're seeing this already put together, but I guided the wire through each section individually before gluing for a very important reason. The longer this is, the more chance there is for your wire to get caught or kinked in there, and it can make it a real pain to guide through. So guide through each of the individual sections before gluing them together. Save yourself some time. Now, if you're looking closely or notice me struggling, you might note that these are almost entirely hollow and that there aren't any channels or dedicated locations for your LED strip lighting. And this can make mounting the lights very, very difficult, especially since you're not going to be able to hold them in place after the model's assembled. For that, I highly recommend Green Stuff. This is a two-part epoxy putty. And what this does is it lets you work very easily with it. It's essentially Play-Doh. And then after a few hours after mixing, it hardens into concrete and keeps everything in place. So Green Stuff is how we're going to be keeping these lights in their final position once they're installed. Here we see the finished installation of the light rig on the star drive of the Enterprise. A couple notes you can easily spot here. You may notice Bondo on each of the joins where the parts meet, and this is to prevent light from leaking out of those particular cracks instead of just the windows like we want. Now, both halves have the same light rig in them, in that we have a strip for our nacelle. This one's not quite glued in. We have a strip for the forward portion of the nacelle. We have a strip for the lower portion of the body. We have a strip for the upper portion of the body, and they both share a strip for the impulse engine and the deflector dish, both of which are mounted on this side. The reason I mounted those on this side is because this is where the main battery rig is. So you can see our battery all the way back in here, and we've mounted our charge plate at a slight angle matching this little door that we're going to either magnetize or use putty to be able to take on and off. As you can see, all the connectors that we need to plug in all these different lights to our power source are ready for us. So we don't have any more soldering or wiring to do. It's all going to be plug and play from here, which is very, very important. Now I'm going to put the picture up of the inside of this, but again, it's very, very, very simple. We're just looking to green stuff in that lower strip so that it's in between the two sets of windows. And our upper strip needs to be positioned similarly, where it has access to all the windows with its lighting, but is still secure by the green stuff. Make sure that at no point this overlaps with the edge of the model, because when we put these together, they're going to bump into each other and cause a problem. Looking at the other side, you can see that I have the strip here for this little impulse engine and a strip here for the deflector dish that I am going to have to make sure are seated properly when I put these together. But because they're anchored hard on here, I don't have any additional gluing to do. Putting up a picture of this one for you to look at, you can clearly see where we've hidden the battery. There aren't any open windows, which means we didn't sacrifice any light effects to put it in there. Also, you can see where our charge board is located is just inside the edge. I did not want it overlapping at all in case it got bumped when I put these together. Do not cover the top of your charge board in any kind of adhesive. This can cause all kinds of problems. So make sure you can green stuff it in along the bottom, but not along the top. Fortunately, the saucer section is much simpler than the body. These large sections really only require one doubled up strip, so it's looped around, to light all of the windows. We can secure this strip in place with green stuff or zip ties, whatever it is you have handy. I used a little bit of both for this. And for a lot of these pieces, that's all we're going to need. We have a few extra effects, however. Here, we do have this impulse engine, which requires its own little strip on both of these pieces. And additionally, here, we have a center section that's raised. So we've put an LED strip around to cover these windows. We've also looped that light around so it provides light through that little top port. Additionally, you can see our battery rig is mounted in here at an angle. Again, that's so that we can get a wire through this bottom section here, which will have a removable port. You can also notice, if you look, that we have wiring going to the input of the battery, and that's actually for this little guy here, which is the optional connection to the star drive for when we're displaying it as a solid piece. And here we are with our assembled portions of the Enterprise D. We have the saucer section and the star drive section. Now, when you're putting these guys together, after they're assembled and your light rig's inside, it's very important to power up the lights and identify any of the gaps in the joins of the model where that light's coming through where it's not supposed to. We only want to see the light in these windows, not in the gaps in the structure. So that's why you're going to see Bondo at different points in this model, and that's just to keep that light from leaking out. Additionally, obviously these nacelles are bare right now, but we're going to want to make sure when we print the casing here that we print it in blue, because we want this to be a final blue color, and this is white. We're also going to go with red up here, red on our impulse engines, and blue on our deflector dish. So we're going to print the covers in that color so that we don't have to worry that these lights are white. Additionally, as you can see, we have our little cord here, and that corresponds to the cord on the back of the saucer section so that I can plug these guys in together and they can charge off the same charge cord. Now, it's probably difficult to see the window lights here, but when I turn the lights down in this shop, holy cow, does this effect come through really, really great. I think it's really important that we went with the warmer orange color because I think it makes it look more homey inside the windows of the Enterprise. Now, our next video on this particular ship is going to deal not only with installing the resin prints, but doing our final assembly with our details, such as like the top bridge section here, as well as the first steps of paint so that we can start getting some color on the model. If you like this video and want to see more like it, please take the time to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel.